I'm joined on the Crispin Flintoff show one day after his birthday by Craig Murray. How you doing, Craig?
Fine, thank you, Gisman. Not too hungover.
Right, well, that's good to know. It's good that you can keep going even on the day after your birthday because there's so much going on around the world and it's very confusing what's happening. And your insight is helpful to everyone. This is this is a headline from the reliable BBC. Government loses bid to block appeal against Palestine Action ban. I watched the hearing on a live stream yesterday. It wasn't very long, and it seems that the government's attempt to stop the Court of Appeal, no, how about the judicial? Let me start again. It seems like the government's attempt to stop a judicial hearing into the ban on Palestine Action has been defeated, but it's also kind of they got a bloody nose on it as well. What's your take on what happened in this ruling yesterday?
Yes, that's right. This actually makes Shabana Mahmood look really stupid because the government attempted to block the judicial review by appealing to the Court of Appeal against the decision to have a judicial review. And not only did the government lose that appeal, but two of the grounds of appeal, which had been two of the grounds of judicial review, which had been dismissed earlier, were brought back. So now, instead of there being a judicial review on 3 counts, there's a judicial review on 5 counts. So the Shabana Mahmood made an extremely stupid decision to attempt to block the review, which possibly has annoyed the judges because I mean, what the government was basically arguing was that the judges are not competent to hear this. And the judges have replied saying, yes, we are competent to hear this. The courts can hear this and we're going to hear it. And what's more, we're bringing back 2 grounds of review.
Do you regard that as a positive thing that the judges are sort of fighting back, or I mean, is that something we could look at as a trend that might help us, that the judges won't just follow whatever the government's doing?
Yes, I think that is true. And it's more likely to happen the more senior judges you get, basically. And these were very senior judges. And there's no doubt yesterday was a victory, and this is a moment of celebration. But it doesn't mean that the judicial review is won. We'll have to see, what happens when the judicial review goes ahead. But I'm reasonably optimistic for it. I don't think by any means it's hopeless, because the judges, the grounds which they added back in both related to the process of how Yvette Cooper did this and her failure to take all the factors she should have taken into account and her failure to consult enough people. And there are now 3 different grounds of appeal of review, which all relate to that question. And it does seem that the way this was brought in by Yvette Cooper, contrary to a great deal of advice, without any widespread consultation, other than with the Israeli embassy and with arms companies, that I think is something which the judges are going to very seriously look at in the review.
Well, that's good news. But on the same sort of time as that, you've written a disturbing article here about 36-minute trials and no jury, Starmer's fascist mass courts. Those charged with terrorism for supporting Palestine Action will have no jury in trials limited to 36 minutes each, with prison sentences up to 6 months. These are the plans for Starmer courts for mass trials of anti-genocide protesters. So if the judicial review doesn't rule in favour of Palestine Action and continues the prescription, it's a bleak future for everyone who's participated in these actions, isn't it? In the Defend Our Juries actions, I mean.
Yeah. Very much so. I mean, this is pretty desperate. And again, one more good thing about yesterday's decision is yesterday's decision made absolutely plain, which wasn't plain before, but the Court of Appeals spelt it out. That if the judicial review finds that Yvette Cooper acted unlawfully, then all these prosecutions will fall. And it will be retrospective. Everybody who's charged with under the Terrorism Act supporting Palestine Action, those prosecutions will all be lost. And that's extremely important. So we've got to win that judicial review. If we don't win that judicial review, we saw this appalling thing that they've got lined up, where they're going to run and conclude trials of 10 people a day, who will basically get 36 minutes each. And that's 36 minutes for the judge and the prosecution and the defense and cross-examination. So, your actual time to defend yourself will be 10 minutes or something. And there'll be no jury. These are summary charges, be before a magistrate. And that's what they have planned. And this was all set out in court 2 days ago, where Judge Michael Snow set this timetable and explained 2,000 people are going to be put through this process and potentially jailed. And it was put to him both by lawyers and by some of the defendants that this just was not enough time for a fair trial. You can't have a fair trial in 36 minutes on something that might send you to prison. And he said, I am not giving more time. Your only remedy is to go to the High Court. Of course, individuals can't afford to go to the High Court. So what they're planning is this kind of mass processing of people in quick kind of Judge Jeffries courts, pretend courts, where they're just going to get people in and sentence them to jail one after the other very, very quickly. Or conceivably, and they don't have to jail them, they could find them, but my guess is they're going to jail people. And that really is quite appalling. There's almost no pretense at justice here.
I mean, does it not seem a bit like the street bail thing, where they arrested people on the street? They didn't take them into the station. They're trying to cut the time it takes to do the administration of these things. But at some point, it will clog up the prisons or something. They're sort of pushing it on further down the line, but at some point it will become unworkable. If there are 2,000 people who are given jail sentences, that just sounds too much to take, doesn't it, for the system?
I mean, the system, they're going to run on 200 court days, so that's basically a year. And there's a court, I can't remember which one, it might be Stratford. There's a courtroom in East London which has been set aside for a year to do it. So they are planning to do it. And they'll do 10 people a day, as I say, 36 minutes each, and shove them through for 200 consecutive working days. Which is, but you must remember, these are terrorism charges. So jail is only part of the problem. One thing is, and I know several people this has happened to now, you will be debanked. You will lose your banking services. I've spoken to one young lady, her bank just cancelled her bank accounts. No other bank will open an account for her, and she's lost her savings. She cannot access the money that was in her bank account. You can't travel to many countries, including the United States, but many others, if you faced or been convicted of terrorism. And people are losing their jobs because they have a terrorist conviction, being sacked. So the jail sentence is only a part of it, if you like. These are absolutely life-changing charges. People are having their lives ruined and given a few minutes before a judge in a kind of Judge Jeffries court in order to do it. And some of these trials are starting shortly. I saw Audrey White from Liverpool was saying her trial is in November, on November the 11th, which is before the judicial review. So plainly, they're looking to actually kick off some of this ahead of the judicial review.
I mean, these are political prisoners, effectively, aren't they? And if you had that many political prisoners, it would be a nightmare for the government, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. I don't know what they're planning to do. I don't know whether because they're already having to release actual criminals earlier from jail. I should say in saying that, I think we send far too many people to jail for petty offences. And we have the most unimaginative and useless in a literal sense. It does no good. Criminal justice system in the world, really. But they are releasing actual criminals early because the jails are overfull. Whether they would look to open detention camps in the same way they think of detaining asylum seekers, how they're actually planning to do this, I don't know. There will be a plan they are working on. But I don't think anybody should underestimate how dangerous and authoritarian Starmer is. I really don't. People may recall that when we had riots a while ago, while he was DPP, he was involved in the instigation of quick justice, as he called it. Very similar thing. Mass courts, bunging people through half an hour each, bang, 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 off you go to prison. This is something that Starmer has form on.
Mm. I'm. It shows how important the judicial review is, but also, I mean, you won't stop doing stuff, will you? I mean, this is your petition this is not your petition. This is your fundraiser here for a Scottish challenge to the prescription of Palestine Action. You're quite a way off target. We'll put this link out when the interview's put out there. So what is the basis of a Scottish challenge to the prescription? Can you tell people about that?
Yeah, well, it's simply this: the court that heard yesterday's appeal, but which was won, which the government lost. The appeal was lost, but we won. Was the Court of Appeal of England and Wales, and the judicial review is by the High Court of England and Wales, which has no jurisdiction in Scotland. So we are taking out as a two-track approach. We're taking out in conjunction with, in cooperation with Huda Amori, who's the plaintiff in the English case. I'm the plaintiff in the Scottish case, or petitioner, I think it's called in Scotland, to take out a separate review in Scotland. Gives us two chances to win, if you like. And there are precedents. For example, when Boris Johnson prescribed Parliament, you may remember he got rid of Parliament in order to get Brexit through by preventing Parliament from sitting. And that was challenged in exactly this way in the English courts by Gina Miller and in the Scottish courts by Joanna Cherry. And actually, the English court said that what Johnson did was legal, and the Scottish court said that what Johnson did was illegal. So it can be. In fact, it's not an improbable result that we will win in the Scottish court but lose in the English court. Could be vice versa, but it gives you two chances, basically. And in the prescription case, it was then taken by the government to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court decided in favour of the Scottish courts, if you like. The Supreme Court came out saying that what Boris Johnson did was illegal. So it's another string to our bow. It's having two shots at it. But you're right. I mean, I must say, the crowdfunder is going disappointingly slow. It's very good of you to point it out, because we really, really need this. We need to get this going in the Scottish courts as well.
How long have you got before the money's needed?
I think at the moment, because it's on crowdjustice.com, and the money goes straight to the lawyers, and unless you hit your target, you don't get anything, basically. Okay. So we put an initial target of 15,000. In fact, frankly, we're going to need an awful lot more than that. But we're certainly going to need that 15,000 within a fortnight to get us past just the next wee stage.
Can they be anonymous donations as well?
They can, yeah. Your donations can be anonymous.
Right, so anyone won't be implicated in worrying about being a supporter of Palestine Action or something like that. So that's
It was extremely difficult with crowd justice to go through. I mean, for example, I wanted to put a picture of the Gazan destroyed landscape to illustrate the appeal. And that wasn't allowed. I wasn't allowed to actually write anything about what the appeal's about, really, because crowd justice themselves were worried about being prosecuted for supporting Palestine Action, even though they're merely the website raising funds which go to the lawyer. So I know people do worry. I should say it was stated very, very clearly in the Court of Appeal, not on this occasion, but on the last time we were in the Court of Appeal on Palestine Action on the 4th of July. The Court of Appeal stated very, very clearly, it is not illegal to campaign for the deproscription of Palestine Action. It's illegal to support Palestine Action, but to campaign for its deproscription on the grounds that it shouldn't be prescribed without actually saying you support its aims and objectives is not illegal.
okay. Well, yeah, it's good to clear that up. Now, you talked about Gaza there. I mean, you've also brought up an issue in your tweets that I'm sure lots of people follow your tweets. People often forward me screenshots of your tweets, and this was one that was forwarded to me as well. There is an imminent danger of a UN Security Council resolution which legalizes and formalizes Israeli occupation and blockade of Gaza during a, in quotes, transitional period, which will never end. Trump, Starmer, and Macron are pushing this. Real danger. China and Russia will not veto. They've also followed that up saying they want to get this through the UN SCR before the ICJ ruling on Israel's blockade of aid agencies is delivered on the 22nd of October. So very shortly, very soon. Can you tell me what that's about and what your fear is there?
Yeah, what the British and the Americans and the French are working on at the United Nations is a Security Council resolution which endorses Trump's peace plan. It may do things like endorse the peacekeeping fund force which will go into Gaza, which may be a UN peacekeeping force, or it may be a coalition of a willing, as they call it, type peacekeeping force that's not actually under UN control, but which nonetheless would be endorsed by a Security Council resolution. What the Americans and the British are seeking to do is, by endorsing the withdrawal plan that keeps Israeli troops in Gaza, and we know that they're intending ultimately to remain always in Gaza, to have a buffer zone of several miles into Gaza that they will never leave. A Security Council resolution would legalize that. So all of the past law that's been built up, including the ICJ ruling of 2024 on the occupation being illegal, including the decision on the wall and the right to armed resistance, all of that would fall. It would be superseded and replaced by a new Security Council resolution which legalizes Israeli occupation of a part of the Gaza Strip, which legalizes whatever blockade mechanisms are in, which legalizes a disarmament of Palestinians. Basically, the Trump plan would become international law because it's endorsed by the Security Council, and we would lose a huge amount of accumulated legal decisions against the Israelis.
I mean, what you also say China and Russia will not veto. Why do you think that?
Well, the Russians came out in active support of a Trump peace plan, which astonished me, frankly. But they did. And I know that Putin is very cognizant of the fact that there are millions, literally, of Russian-speaking Israelis, and an awful lot of the oligarchs around Putin are Zionists. So I'm not sure Putin sees an interest in vetoing it. And the Chinese, although almost everything I've ever said since the genocide started at the Security Council, I've agreed with them. They've been very good. Again, I'm not sure they see an interest in vetoing it at a time when they're in a potentially very damaging start of a trade war with Trump and the United States.
Does it only need one country to veto?
Of the permanent 5, it only needs one. Oh,
right.
Out of Russia, France, China, America, and the UK, any one of them can veto. Other than that, you and then you have the other members, and you need a majority. But there's a real danger of a Security Council resolution which endorses the Trump peace plan and which replaces, and that then supersedes the accumulated international law on the illegality of the occupation. And it could, for example, legalize the maritime blockade. It could legalize blockade arrangements. So I'm very worried about this. It is a very worrying development.
And it's on you said the 22nd of October. They want to get this through before then.
Yeah, well, on the 22nd of October, the International Court of Justice brings out its decision where it's almost certainly going to say that Israel's actions in blocking UNRWA and blocking other aid agencies have been illegal, and that Israel has an occupation as the occupying power to provide aid and hasn't been doing that. That's going to be quite damaging for them. So they'd quite like, if you like, to supersede that by a new legal arrangement before that judgment comes out. I don't think now they'll manage to do it. But from what I understand, in terms of negotiating a text at New York, I'm hearing that things possibly aren't going fast enough for them to get it done by the 22nd of October. But whenever they do get it through, that then becomes a status quo. It's actually very similar to Lebanon. The last big, before this one, in 2008, I think, that the last big previous Israeli invasion of Lebanon resulted in a Security Council resolution, which is awful and extremely one-sided, and which mandates the disarmament of Hezbollah, and which mandates, if you like, effectively a buffer zone up to the Litani River, and which is used by the Israelis and the Americans to justify the daily bombings we are seeing in Lebanon, all over Lebanon. And they did manage, because the world gets into these periods of war weariness where it's prepared to agree anything to kind of smooth over what's happened and move on. And they did get such a resolution, I think it's 1707, for Lebanon. And there's a danger of a really bad security resolution coming out of this that establishes the Trump plan in international law and in that way legalizes elements of the Israeli occupation.
Right. Well, we'll see what happens. I'm interested to find out what about that. Thank you for clearing that one up. Now you were in the UN. You were at the UN. I saw this this clip of you, which I'll just find here. Yeah. So you were at the UN yourself, and I didn't know that you were, and then I saw this clip. This is a very interesting clip. I'll just play it so everyone can see it.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished members of the committee. It's 2025. We are a quarter of the way through the 21st century already, and the world is sick of settler colonialism. We shouldn't still be talking about it, and we should have got rid of it. And New Caledonia is one of the worst examples of continued settler colonialism. It's a place where the indigenous people are not only deprived of real power in the state, deprived of autonomy in major monetary, fiscal, defense, foreign policy, it's a place where they are excluded from economic autonomy, where they are excluded from most of the wealth of the natural resources of the colony. This cannot stand. And we have a situation where local people, driven to despair by their circumstances, react with an act of understandable resistance, and that is met with military force and the old excuses by the colonizer to stamp down on the colonized. And we're seeing practices I find it hard to believe we are still seeing. We are seeing young members of the resistance shipped 10,000 miles away from their homes and their families to prison in France, in the prisons of the colonizer. And we're even seeing a situation where a French court recently ruled that one of them should be sent back to New Caledonia, and he's still in prison in Paris while the French government appeals against that decision. This is not the 19th century. These kind of behaviors need to stop. And now we're seeing fake agreements which are rejected in the declaration of the 24th of September by the legitimate representatives of the Kanak people. Let's have no more of these colonial tricks. Let's have no more of these fake agreements. The French have one duty in New Caledonia, and that's to get out of New Caledonia. Thank you.
That's a very good end to your speech there. What can you tell us why you were a petitioner and more about the issues that you were talking about in New Caledonia?
Yeah. Well, it's a rather roundabout story in a sense, because the main reason I was in New York is that we're trying to get Scotland added to the list of non-self-governing territories, because I believe Scotland is in fact a colony. People find it hard to take in. When you tell them Ireland was a colony, people have no difficulty in accepting Ireland was a colony. But you tell them Scotland's a colony, and people find it hard, even though the two situations are extremely similar. You know, Ireland also had a treaty of union. Ireland had people serving in the British Armed Forces. Ireland had people owning slaves. Co-option of a colonized into the imperial venture is always part of imperialism. But anyway, so I'm involved in that decolonization space at the United Nations, if you like, and we're making common cause with other colonized peoples and the liberation movements. So people like the indigenous people of New Caledonia, who suffer terrible discrimination and exploitation, and are now a minority in their own country. And also with liberation movement countries like Nicaragua and Venezuela, we're trying to get the United Nations to take a much more radical approach to decolonizing the world's remaining colonies.
Right. And what about New Caledonia? What's happened there? Because what you mentioned, I haven't seen any of this. I mean, it's obviously we're not going to see French imperial sort of news in this country. But what has been happening there? Someone being sent to a French prison from there. It seems really extraordinary.
Yeah, no, there was. The position of the Kanak people, who are the native people of New Caledonia, is very, very bad. The New Caledonia has got one of the world's biggest nickel mines. That's the French interest in it. It's massively used for nickel extraction. There are no native people, except in the most menial labor, employed in the industry. And all the profit from it, of course, none that goes to the native people of New Caledonia. And the indigenous people live in great poverty and hopelessness and with a lot of drug and alcohol and all those other problems. Exactly as happens to demoralize colonized people, including, for example, happened for years and years to the Native Americans. For exactly that set of problems. They rose up 3 or 4 years ago, and there was quite a nasty, violent rebellion. And I think about 20 people were killed all in all. As a result of it, the leaders of the native rebellion were shipped to France to be tried, as opposed to being tried at home in New Caledonia. They're young men. They're very, very young men, and there are several of them now in French prisons, far away from their families. And these are the leaders of the independence movement. They're not people charged with directly killing people themselves. They're charged with instigating rioting and that kind of thing. It's a very sad story. But of course, everyone will be seeing the parallels towards Israel and settler colonialism. And of course, when people are extremely badly oppressed, it results in violence. That's what happened on October the 7th. You know, colonial people will resist. Colonized people will resist. Colonized people have a right to resist. And I think everyone in the United Nations in New York got the subtext of what I was saying in that way.
Brilliant. I don't know how you do all this stuff, Craig, because not only do you actually do stuff, but you write prolifically about it as well. And you know, and the fact you found half an hour to talk to me is even more extraordinary after your birthday. Brilliant. Just keep going. Don't die. We need to, you know, we need to embalm you, but like Bentham, but before you die, or just don't die, or do like Michael Jackson thing where you go in a ice. Yeah, that didn't work for him, did it? Where he went in some.
I'm kind of embalming myself from the inside with whiskey. I think that's a lot of the secret of my longevity and continued energy.
Right. Well, look, I'm not advising anyone at home to take your diet, but and your strategy for long life. But it's good to see you keep going, and you're an inspiration to me and everyone else. So thank you so much for your doing, and I'll let you get on with whatever it is you're going to be doing now, because there's probably something really important you've got to do now. So thank you.
Thanks.
Hey.